Hello, Business Law 2 students. Welcome to the last lecture in this series covering Unit 6, Chapter 25B on employment discrimination. Let's begin with one verse from the scriptures found in Numbers, chapter 23. God is not human that he should lie, nor a human being that he should change his mind. Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? All the mandates in the scriptures, all the promises in the scriptures that he makes, he follows through. Maybe not in our timing, but in his timing. And one of his biggest promises is that he will take care of us. So trust in him, and let's wrap this up. Alrighty, chapter 25B. The topic is employment discrimination. Specifically, we're going to talk about, I'm looking at the slide, discrimination based on gender. You'll see a couple questions from this slide. So Title VII extends its protections. One of the protected class is women. So there's no more classifications of jobs for men or women only, unless there's a good basis for that, a business necessity or a bona fide occupational requirement. You don't see advertisements anymore, help wanted, designated male or female. Let's talk about pregnancy specifically. That used to be a point of discrimination in the past, but no longer today. It is treated as like a temporary inability to work, just like any other medical situation. So that's good to note. Equal Pay Act of 1963. It's important. There could be prima facie evidence that just because there's pay differentials for the same position, that could be a basis for discrimination. But what the EEOC looks at when it comes to pay differential is the specific job. There are, the general rule is you can't discriminate on basis of gender with regards to compensation. But what they'll look into is what is the basis of the wage differential. It could be, for example, seniority is permissible, merit, like if you have a certain degree, you're able to be compensated more, or if you're able to complete a series of tests, you're able to be compensated more. For example, your Microsoft Office examination certification, great thing to have on the resume. But I digress. There are other reasons for pay differential. For example, it could be a piecemeal production rate of pay, excuse my hair, where you're paid on the quality and the quantity of the pieces produced, and perhaps the male is producing more pieces or more quality pieces, and so they're compensated even though the male and the female are in the same position. There could be a pay differential based on that, which is permissible. All right, and then of course read over Paycheck Fairness Act 2009 and the Pay Act of 2009 there. Okay. Next slide, sexual harassment. We're looking at different types of sexual harassment. You'll see a couple questions with regards to this. There are different types. For example, there's quid pro quo sexual harassment, where you're actually trading advancements or raises or better benefits in exchange for sexual favors. Not permissible, inappropriate for both parties concerned, and it's also illegal according to Title IX. So if either party participates in something like that, they both could be subject to penalties. The other type of sexual harassment is hostile environment. All right, and that could be not just activities or touch, but it could also be language. Could also be what's online, what's included. Online harassment is included in this. In your PowerPoint mentions racial jokes, ethnic slurs, sexually explicit or offensive images. Those are part of adding to a hostile environment that could cause liability to the company. What's that mean for employees? Well, they're liable if they perpetrate that. And if the employer knows about it or should have known about it, they're liable for it as well and could face penalties from the EEOC if charges are brought against them. All right, we note constructive discharge. That's where the environment is so bad that an employee feels like they have no other choice but to terminate their employment. Well, that's constructive discharge, and if the employer knew or should have known and failed to take any corrective behaviors or document any of this, then the employer could be held liable. So from a practical standpoint, because we're not just training employees here, we're training future supervisors, it's your job to be kind of the, what do they call it? No, I can't think of the phrase. But your job is to be the wet blanket, that's what it is, where the jokes, if they're inappropriate, you've got to stop them, you've got to warn people. And the biggest encouragement I give to future supervisors is document. Every time there's a situation, you need to document it. And that protects you and protects the company. All right, the next slide is titled Item B, Sources of Sexual Harassment. And you'll see 4 questions coming from this slide. The first one, managers, supervisors. With regards to quid pro quo cases, the employers are generally liable for sexual harassment by managers and supervisory employees, regardless of if the employer knew or not. So if you're a manager over supervisors, okay, or if you're the owner of a company, let me give you this example. If you're the owner of a company, you've hired managers, whether you know about it or not, and they are perpetrating some type of sexual quid pro quo, you're liable. So what does that tell you as owners of businesses in the future? You need to be training all supervisors and managers, all employees for that matter, and building in accountability systems so that everyone knows and that you're on top of all managerial situations. You just can't let it ride. So you want to set up a series of managerial checks. With regards to sexual harassment, with regards to coworkers, that is, workers that are harassing each other. Here, if the employer knew or should have known about the harassment and failed to take any remedial action, then the employer is liable. What about non-employees? There was a situation that I witnessed here in town at McDonald's where there was an employee, a patron, a client, constantly harassing the employers at, the employees at the counter. And it took about 3 incidents before the owner stepped in and barred this client from ever attending any of the McDonald's restaurants. So the employer has to stay on top of these things. So if they knew or should have known, that's the standard. What about same-sex gender? Same gender harassment, not necessarily homosexual in nature, but rather if it's even just 2 heterosexuals harassing each other with regards to sexuality. That too is prohibited by Title VII. And then we just emphasize with regards to online harassment. It can include texts, social media posts, blogs, anything directly aimed at another employee, as well as anything that's not directly aimed at another employee. For example, if there's suggestive images on the wall or on the computer or anywhere at the workplace, that adds to a hostile environment, which is prohibited and open up the employer to possible liabilities. Next slide, defenses to employment discrimination. So an employer there's a complaint filed against an employer to the EEOC. What are some of the common defenses? The first one we want to talk about is business necessity. And let's read the definition together. Discriminatory policy or practice related to job performance. All right, so the example I mentioned in an earlier video is a law degree's prerequisite to acting as a lawyer. Notwithstanding that minorities are less likely to hold a law degree, okay, that ran through the court system that a law degree was a necessity to be an attorney in the state of Illinois. In order to get a law degree, you have to have 3 years of law school, plus you have to pass the bar exam. So business necessity relates to the characteristics as it relates to job performance. A BFOQ, bona fide occupational qualification, that has to do with physical identifiable characteristics or traits, such as gender, national origin, that being reasonably necessary to the normal operation of the business. That could include religious belief, under the exception of religious institutions able to require people that work for them to have the same religious belief. Normally, a BFOQ defenses are upheld involving gender. But note this, a BFOQ is not valid for race. All right. So let's pose a situation regarding the gender example. What if male guards, okay, are required for male inmates, especially, for example, in juvenile delinquency homes, where the discriminatory effect of that is there are less female guards hired because of that requirement. Would that be a bona fide occupational qualification? Well, I think the courts have ruled that it is. However, the county or the state has to provide a rational basis for stipulating the requirement. In other words, even though it seems obvious that there should be female guards over female inmates instead of male guards over female inmates, the state or the county would need to stipulate why that is required. For example, if there's proof that there's increased number of sexual inappropriate behavior in mixed situations, that would be the reasonable basis, but they would have to stipulate what is the reasonable basis for that. Other reasons to discriminate that are permissible are seniority. If you've been there longer, you get paid more. Next page, next slide. Remedies under Title VII. You'll see about 4 questions with regards to this. There doesn't look like there's that much material on this slide, but basically what do we need to emphasize? That if you win under a Title VII claim with the EEOC, they can reward you reward you with reinstatement of the job. They can order back pay for whatever compensation you were not paid. if you were to have been promoted during that time, if it was reasonable that you would have been promoted, they can retroact a promotion. And if they show that the employer acted with malice or reckless disregard for the rights of the employees, then they can award punitive damages. The A, B, and C there can be, they're considered compensatory damages. All you have to prove is that the employer intentionally discriminated. However, in order to get punitive damage, you have to show that they acted with malice. All right, that pretty much concludes this lecture, just trying to highlight the big points. Once again, if you have questions, please give me a call. And if you have any questions with regards to coming up test or the final, just give me a call. However I can help you. Love you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.